gentlemen, welcome back to Shoot, Punch, Kick, the only podcast in the world where three vampire hunters in Brooklyn take a stake to the heart of our favorite 80s and 90s action movies.
Hell yeah.
Today, Anthony, Telly, and I are attempting to ice skate uphill and revisit the granddaddy of Marvel superhero action films, Blade. Welcome, boys.
What's going on? Staying
How
out
you
of
guys doing today?
Staying out of the daylight. I'm no Daywalker here.
Better watch out when Tracy Lords invites you to an underground party.
I don't know.
Gets me every time.
These days, yeah.
I'm like, yo, I would have definitely been a familiar. I would have been like, yo, turn me. Because this shit looks
yeah,
lit.
for real. For real. You guys know how to party, and I like it. I like it a lot. So this movie, I think, is interesting to me just because I think when most people think about the superhero action movie genre, at least on the Marvel side of things, they tend to look at 2000s X-Men as the first one or the one that got things started. But actually, it's this.
Mm-hmm.
So much, in fact, it's funny. At the time, I didn't even realize that this was a Marvel property. What about you guys?
Opposite for me. Because, because 4 years ago was, I think if this was 98, right? The Spider-Man, the animated series, I think started in mid 90s, either 94 or 95. And the first season was all Spider-Man. But as it went on, he would start interacting with the other characters. So they would have Daredevil and Kingpin. And he would really kind of put himself in their lore. So it would be kind of the main the main hero and then whoever their main villain is. And there was I think a 3-part episode where he met Blade, and Blade was telling him there's this whole underground vampire scene, and you met Mobius and some of the other people. And between that, I was really heavy. I didn't read the comics as much, but I was really into collecting from Pinocchio's near school.
Pinocchio, and that old dude.
It's not there anymore.
No way.
I there all the time. It's not there anymore. No.
Damn. I remember the last time I checked, it was there. Oh man, R.I.P. Pinocchio's. But I was really into the Marvel cards, the Fleer, whatever, and they would give you a biography on the back and their stats and stuff
their
that.
Power levels. Yeah.
I was really up on Blade. That when I saw the trailer, I was like, no way, it's a dude from the character from the movie. So super hyped to see it. Saw it opening weekend, and then also too I was probably about 14. So at that time, I was really if a movie was rated R, it just had a little bit more credibility for me. So I was like, a comic book movie, a movie that this dude was just in a cartoon, and this is rated R. So I'm
actually really curious about that. So before we get to Telly's personal history, one of the things I was reading while I was doing my research for the film was that this iteration of Blade is very much different than the Blade as he appeared in the comic books. Apparently, for the majority of the time that Blade was around, his only power was that he was immune to being turned into a vampire. He wasn't actually, the Daywalker who had all the strengths. Is that the way he was represented in the cartoon? Did the cartoon representation look anything at all like the movie version?
No, in the cartoon, and one of them, I think he was just white. That was kind of weird too. So, but I remember they really played into and I got to rewatch the cartoon. I don't remember as in depth. I just remember it was just kind of very basic. Hey, there's vampires in the city. So I don't want to speak too out of turn with some of the differences.
Fair enough. What about you, Telly? What's your personal
history
with
with
this?
Heard of Blade at all, and even though I was a big comic book reader back in the 80s and was really addicted to the $1 the comic book bin where they were just getting rid of their scrubby comics, and I would love those those minor sort of Marvel characters like Moon Knight and even Howard the Duck comics and Shang-Chi and all these people. But never came across Blade at all. So when this came out, I don't think I even knew it was a Marvel property, and which was a big deal because I did watch the early Marvel movies of the late 80s with the Punisher and even that awful Captain America movie and that even worse Fantastic Four movie. Yeah. So it was interesting to see this. I think at that time, because comic book movies were not in vogue, and also this was a couple years after Spawn came out, right? So I don't think they wanted it to be sort of coupled with that. So they it just seemed more like a fantasy action adventure.
Yeah, so for me, I remember going to see this when it came out, and I remember leaving the theater kind of really being blown away. I think stylistically, it was like a template for what was to come from action films in the kind of years that followed. It's like a very specific time and place that looked very much like the stylistic template that was kind of sent by this. The darker green and blue tones we'd see like in Underworld, the leather jacket costuming aesthetic we'd like come to see in The Matrix. Really terrible CGI use that we had like just finishing a few years earlier in Mortal Kombat. I mean, even the music was kind of a vibe. But again, going back at the time, I had no clue that this was a Marvel character. I just thought it was a really cool vampire movie with kind of like a black ninja in it, right? And you know, I'd go. So again, back to it though. I mean, I had seen these movies a bunch of times. I was really big into the entire kind of the world that they created through all the sequels, but admittedly, I haven't seen it since those days, so this was kind of like coming back to it. And
damn, it's wild because when you said it, I had this unopened at the time because they had a sale a couple of weeks ago, and I was just like, yo, what's a movie that like I loved? And I hadn't hadn't revisited it as much, but minor spoiler, if you're watching by now you probably know he had the cameo in the last Deadpool, and that was, I was like, I remember, like, you know what I mean, the whole like Wesley Snipes thing. And also listen, I don't know if this holds up. This probably definitely does not hold up, but I remember being into Blade the series on Spike TV where
Sticky Fingers. Yeah.
And I don't know, like Spike. I remember it being cool. And then also too, like the sequel had
it was good though.
Guillermo del Toro. Like I remember the franchise. I wasn't crazy about the third one, but like in hindsight, similar to you, Carlos, I just remember being like, yeah, I like Blade, especially one. You know what I mean? And I hadn't seen it as much. I definitely seen it a couple of times since back in the day, but I remember each time just. I think I always acknowledged that the CG wasn't great, but I remember like everything else being cool. So this was fun to revisit too.
I mean, it's funny too. When I first saw it, I didn't notice the CG at the time being particularly bad. However, whenever I think about, and we've had earlier discussions about, you know, my appreciation of kind of real time special effects, not CG stuff. I always go to the example of Blade 2 because there's a specific fight scene in Blade 2 where, again, you know, Blade gets CG'd into doing some of those like flips and stuff, and it just didn't look right. And I remember that kind of being the first time I'm like, I don't really like what's going on with CG in movies right now. Like that's a prime example.
Big, whatever that tech was just really hot for a while, and like where it was like the camera moving in 3D space. And I remember like the one that I think about that had the closest parallels to Blade 2 was Matrix Reloaded when he fights all the Smiths. And I was in that same thing where it just felt not real.
Like
everything
plasticky
felt
kind of.
Yeah, like everyone felt like weightless in the gravity situation, and it's wild because it's like Blade 2 was paired with such really great like monster effects, like typical Guillermo del Toro, like the faces opening, great cast and stuff like that. But I remember just like that was the one where I was just like what should have been the best parts of the movie, the action parts, like kind of with this one, I was like, oh man, that's like almost one of the weakest parts because it was like just watching a cartoon at that point.
Yep. All right, so we normally like to begin by giving our AI overlords over at ChatGPT a chance to flex their muscles and give us a plot synopsis. So let's see what ChatGPT had to say. Blade 2000 is actually a bit of a mix-up. The film Blade was released in 1998. This horror action movie directed by Stephen Norrington stars Wesley Snipes as Blade, a half vampire, half mortal vampire hunter. He possesses supernatural abilities while still being able to withstand sunlight like a human. Blade battles against a malevolent vampire Deacon Frost, portrayed by Stephen Dorff, who has a nefarious plan to resurrect the blood god La Magra and take over the world. I'm wondering if it's like a Mexican vampire? With the help of his mentor, Whistler, and a hematologist named Dr. Karen Jensen, Blade seeks to stop Frost and protect humanity from the vampire threat. You know, looking at this was a little bit more of a basic synopsis that I've gotten from ChatGPT. I feel like all the previous ones that we've done kind of had was a little bit more plot heavy, and even had a little bit of the like marketing sizzle to it. I don't know. This one just felt a little bland.
I think
Are you
probably,
okay, ChatGPT?
No, this is probably, and I think this, like, I don't know if it's separated. I mean, it's talking about the film, but it's probably tough for the AI to like pull from so many sources. Think about how many Blade stories are out there. So it might be better safe than sorry than just mixing
we found the AI's limitation is Blade synopses.
Yeah, what was that first sentence about?
That's just it. It's actually a bit of a mix-up. And the film, in quotes, Blade, was released in 1998, which led me to believe they were going to say the TV show Blade was something else, which it didn't do. But yeah, it's actually a bit of a mix-up.
Maybe they meant
I don't know
mashup?
what the actually. I think they mean mashup, and the actually though I don't know if it's just trying to sound conversational. I don't know.
All right. Well,
do not know.
Okay. One of your best.
Yeah, man. I hope you're all right. So as far as initial reactions go, for me at least, I mean, I can totally see why I loved it when it came out. But it's very much a product of its era. Like, the only part that for me really held up about this movie upon this watch that wasn't like nostalgia based was the action sequences. Listen, it's a very fun movie, and by no means do I think it sucks, but I think it's, again, very much a product of its era. And as fun as that may be, I don't know if it would necessarily hold up to today's standards, or based, watched by, a 40-year-old's, eyes. So let's start with you, Telly. What were your initial reactions to seeing this again?
Well, this is the first time I watched it since the first time I watched it, which is about 16 years ago. So I remember it being entertaining, but like nothing I ever like bothered to revisit. And watching it again.
Did you see the sequels?
I don't know if I saw the second one. I definitely didn't see the third one. And I'm not sure if I saw the second one. But I definitely am interested in revisiting it. But watching it again as, a much older person, there's things I really like about it. But overall, it's good. It's watchable, but nothing really stand out.
Dash, I'm guessing, if I had to guess, that you have a bit of a different take, and I'm very interested to hear it. So please proceed.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it. Initial thoughts was I just felt like by the end it starts to get a little bit, and it's one of those things where it's tough for me to kind of talk about it because it was like a first thing doing a lot of what it's done has since become cliche. So for example, like I was really on board mostly up until about the third act, where I think it gets kind of like superhero-y again. Like there's always like, a small story in a superhero movie, and then it's like the world's at stake. It's always like it gets bigger than just like a situational thing. But I think overall, like when it started and I heard that club theme, and I'm like, all right, you just remember it was a bit more funny than I remember, which again is like something that I think that's really in line with the Marvel movies of always having these like quips, or something happens and he has a little bit of character. But I was into it. There wasn't much that pulled me out of what there wasn't anything that they tried to explore too much of the character, and you're just like, all right, like just kind of get to the next thing. I felt like it moved at a pretty decent pace. I thought that the world building at first didn't feel as clunky as I kind of remembered it. Like it was like very, like the whole club scene, it's like, what's a day in Blade's life? This, how does, and I felt like a lot of things kind of felt organic as I was watching it. And I just remembered like Wesley Snipes was an action star toward, of the 90s. And I thought that watching it, and what my like kind of preference for movies was it lined up with that. One-liners, cool action scenes, an interesting world that's not super done. And what you were talking about before, like it did have the house techno soundtrack, the way that the costumes were of like I thought that this played better than like the X-Men leather or like the Matrix to it. Like the Matrix didn't like looked cool, but it like didn't really measure up in weird life. Yeah, exactly, in real life. So I was overall
he has a slit
pretty into
in the
it.
back of his leather jacket to fit his katana.
And
how
I just bought it.
Is that?
And I just bought it, and like a whole bunch of little stuff. Like I thought, like shouldn't be cool, right? Like when he throws and again, I think the main thing for me is like in the first like 5 minutes, they're like, look, you're gonna see this for the next 2 hours. And I think once I was on board with it at the beginning, I'm like, all right, just like don't say nothing stupid, you know. And I feel like for the most part, they didn't.
I mean, yeah, I think to your point, that first scene, what a way to set the table. Right, like again, it's iconic now, and you know people always talk about, or at least you know in the Blade franchise, about that scene at the the literal like bloodbath in the back of the club, you know, and the way it's shot. Also shot out, I think that actor was from The Shield and a couple of other stuff.
Kenny Johnson.
But like, that guy, and like you know you're being brought into this like club that's like super secret. It looks everyone is gorgeous inside. The music is bumping. Tracy Lords is the one bringing you. Shout out to her. And then all of a sudden the blood thing happens and you're surrounded by monsters. There's a lot of like POV shots from his reaction, seeing like monsters around him. And it's a nightmare. And then all of a sudden the nightmare's nightmare shows up and they're like, oh shit, it's him. It's Blade. And then he just proceeds to fuck up everybody in the entire place in a really cool
and
techno-laced.
Like
you know, like he's enjoying this. It's like choreographed well. And, you know, and then, like, that's literally the first 8 minutes of this movie. So, like, as far as setting the table and, like, okay, this is what you need to expect. Like, this is the world. I found that, like, really, really, really effective.
I like that it used... Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just asking Telly if you had any thoughts on specifically that scene and how
I think that's probably the best action scene in the whole movie. In terms of just like the choreography, the way it's shot, everything. And what's funny is like watching it over, I realized in my memory, I always think this was like it was a huge nightclub with like these high ceilings and everything. I realized it was just like a little warehouse space, you know. But I think the way it was shot, the music, everything, the vibe, the editing. So it made it much bigger, much more larger than life than it was. But yeah, great way to start a movie. The way the vampires die doesn't seem consistent through like the whole middle of the movie because none of them die in that same way again. But and then you know the entrance of Blade, and I like the fact that it just gets started. This is not what I really appreciate about this movie. This wasn't an origin movie where he discovers his powers and he's testing them out. He's just like, let's just get into it. And another thing I was thinking of watching this is that this was like back in the day when studios really had an identity in the kinds of movies they made, because this was New Line Cinema. And I could see a red thread between this and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mortal Kombat, and even Spawn, like kind of improving upon what they did wrong in Spawn. So, and I think that's the reason I didn't see this in the theater, because I was burned by Spawn. So I'm like, I'm not going to see another one of these. But obviously this is much better than Spawn.
I love that the New Line Cinema, when they did it, like it turns red and you're like, like you're leaning into the whole blood part of it. The thing that I like, and you know, even beyond it not being an origin film, it's like when you play a video game and at the beginning they give you all the weapons and you see like full form what it does.
Then they take it away from you.
Yeah, I just love like at the beginning of the movie you see like fully capable Blade. You're like, you know, does he fight people with his hands? Yeah, like this. Does he use stakes? Like, yeah, like this. How about guns? Yep. You know, like swords. And I thought like by the time you get there, you're so up to speed on what he can do, his capabilities. And I even like the fact that the setting up of it establishes that underworld, because as the guy goes in there, it's like clearly like a meat butcher market. It's like very meat packing district, and like underground there's a door person, but there's also like meat carcasses like hanging around. And I just thought that it was like so well established, and just this doesn't carry over to the whole script, but certain moments are like tight, like they do multiple things. So like, for example, you might ask the question, is Blade by himself with this? When he gets the garlic and he goes to like his boys thing and they just give a dap, you're like, oh, okay, there's other people that he fights with, that, you know, other people know about this, they're against, like, he never says, yeah, I have people that I work with all over the city. And I feel like that would be now
showed instead of telling.
Yeah, and I just think like that whole first scene does like multiple things. Like vampires go out there and they get victims. They bring them back to these clubs. The clubs are converted from other spaces that are something else during the day. And like all of these little things of just like a 5-minute scene in addition to the character, the introduction is just like, damn, man, you got a lot in those like first 7 pages.
Great world telling, great world building, and again that common phrase like show don't tell. I mean, even to the extent to the joke that we always make about how do you show that somebody's a badass, right? Like as soon as Blade appears, they're all in shock. They're all in awe. It's him.
Yeah.
Is it really him? Yeah. And then he then proceeds to fuck everybody up, and so maybe we didn't need to see that it's him to know he was a badass.
Yeah.
But also like the fact that little moment where he's just looking at all of them was, I thought, like really, really genius and well put together. Unfortunately, I think that that startup, that amazing startup, that tight startup doesn't necessarily extend to your point to like the rest of the movie. But again, just even going back to like the story and kind of concept. I mean, you put Wesley Snipes in a leather trench coat, you give him a katana, and you basically make him a black ninja hunting down vampires. I mean, I'm fucking sold, right?
Yeah.
And even more than that, too, I was trying to think about other representations of like vampire society in movies. And, around the time, I think there was like Interview with a Vampire where like, they're all kind of like lonely. Dracula is kind of like a one vampire and he's kind of got like a den. But the idea that they have this kind of like Illuminati-esque council of vampires with like families. I don't know that it was necessarily executed perfectly well, but just the idea of it I think is like really cool. I think there was a book of there's a line of books and games called Vampire the Masquerade that kind of approach that. I'm not sure if this was stolen from that or if this came from Marvel, but Tally, what do you think, just like stylistically and like conceptually?
Well, conceptually, as I was rewatching this, I was just thinking of They Live. So going to your point of the Illuminati, secret society, kind of these puppet masters that are in hidden in plain sight, and then also the fact that both movies take place in downtown LA and really exploit that aspect of it. But yeah, no, I think this was probably one of, I don't know, I don't know if I'm wrong, but like, yeah, definitely one of the first mainstream movies to do that at the vampire action thing. I think obviously way before, a couple of years before Underworld. Yeah.
Dash, any thoughts?
Just no, I liked it because that was like the thing that I probably liked the most about a movie like Lost Boys, where it was like there's this underworld thing going on and how do they interact with the city. And I like that this one was bigger than just a city because he's like, they own the cops, right? There's like, different levels. First off, having Udo Kier or Kier, like as the head of, like, it just gave it relevance and gravitas of just feeling like, okay, the like vampire elders are like a force to be reckoned with. Like I believe that like level
of 1,000-year-olds.
Yeah,
because and we've been doing this for generations, and
I really like that part of the elders and everything, and it reminded me of just like watching like Hong Kong triad movies with the elders sitting around a table and this hothead trying to kind of take things over. But like you guys were saying about just like they start out with like great ideas, but they don't really like follow through with it, and then that just kind of goes nowhere, and they just kill off Udo Kier. But I really like that. At least the setup was great. Execution
and that's the thing where I'm a little bit torn because I agree with you like 100% with that, but then I feel like if it goes too into that, right, then what does the movie start to be? It becomes like, and that's what I kind of liked about the limited scope of this, because the way the Blade sets it up, he's like, look, we're fighting this war. This is a battle in that war. Like he's like, look, we go to different towns, and in this particular movie is like his LA adventure, and he's been doing this for a while, and I really like the limited scope of it. But then like I do wonder if it goes bigger than that, right? Like how far do you go? Is it about the Illuminati? Is it about these things? So like I totally agree where it felt like a little bit just brushed over, but then I think it could have like opened itself up to a lot more criticism and like not sticking some of the landing by like, how old are these vampires? What, whose families do we kind of lean into? But the one thing that I did like about the aesthetics of it was I think this was the first time that I felt like older vampires had that triad feel of like mafia style, because like usually it's, if you're 100 years old, you're wearing blouses and, you know, you're very like speaking Victorian and stuff like that. And I like that it wouldn't be plausible to me to have someone like speaking old English, in the same way that it's not in others.
So Dash, I have like sort of the inverse reaction to you, where I felt it got too big halfway through it, where they're bringing like the blood god back and because that's something I completely forgot about when I was before watching this again, and I'm like, where like that whole plot line, I just thought they could have reined that in a little bit. It just got too kind of over the top, and it's not really set up very well. It's like he's doing some code he's trying to unlock some secret texts, and suddenly he's going to be bringing back the demon god of vampires and all this.
Jabba the Hutt decoded it.
Yeah, I'm like, what is this? And he's at the core. I mean, it would have been interesting to just kind of make it this like kind of, I guess that's what Underworld did, where it's more about like these like, you know, warring factions in the supernatural vampire world.
Yeah, and that's what I was talking about earlier with like, you know, kind of losing me towards the third act, where it became very typical superhero movie of like, this isn't just a couple people battling, it's like bigger. And then he's also at the core of it, right? Like he's the one key to it. And it was just like, you didn't like just have him just battle this dude and stop his plans. It got a little bit more convoluted towards the.
I mean, it's funny that you say that though, with regards to the ending, because I read that the original version of the ending was very different, right? It didn't have the final sword fight between Blade and Stephen Dorff. It actually, he becomes, when he gets La Magra, he becomes this amorphous blob that covers the city and turns everyone in the city into vampires. And then it was going to become a sequel, basically, where like now Blade's in a city that is completely, you know, all vampires. But they changed it, because apparently audiences hated it in test showings, but also the movie at that point with that ending was so bad that a lot of the producers were like, we're not even sure this is going to get a sequel.
Yeah.
So they actually had to do reshoots, and that whole final sequence, which again I think is one of the more iconic portions of the film, was all done after the fact. So I mean, what we got was actually them kind of reining it in to some degree, a little bit. But so that actually will help us decide where we'll take this conversation next. The question I pose to you guys is, are some of those faults more on the side of the director, or is that a writing issue? And then we can talk about either the director or the writer. Dash, who do you think is more at fault for kind of the way it veers off and gets a little off track?
I think it's I would put that one on the writing, because it's
Goyer?
The scope of the characters and the scope of the world that we're deciding to look at. The promise that I feel like the movie starts off with is very like microscopic in this bigger world, right? Like they're in control of the world. We're in LA. We're focusing on this like particular family, you know, and what's happening in this like unfolding story. But then it starts to get like, okay, you know, and like Telly said, it becomes Deacon Frost, and Deacon Frost is getting the main, you know, the ancient vampire, and then it starts to get like bigger and bigger and bigger, and I think that's where the movie starts to fall apart, and where it's like I wouldn't really consider that like a directing choice unless they're like, rewrite this. You know what I'm saying? So like I thought to the best of its I was gonna say, like, to the best of its ability, the director, I thought, did a good job of presenting that, right? Like, so if you look at some of like the set pieces of where the main vampires are, where it's like very like cathedral looking, not cathedral, but like very like big marble walls, looks kind of like, you know, kind of timeless, right? Like, you know, where you could see this having existed for a while. It feels, you know, it gives relevance
ancient
to
kind of.
So like stuff like that. I think the directing was good in the context of like, oh, this is the script. How can I present this in a way that measures up to it? But I just think that the writing got, and this is like kind of reminds me a little bit about like a Batman Begins, or even like you know, I mean, on the writing context of just like, Batman against guy. No, Gotham's at the court. No, the world's at, and I think that's like a continuous like writing thread that I see.
So let's focus. Let's keep our focus. We'll get to the directing, but let's keep our focus on the writing. And just tell you before I just want to say this is written by Goyer, and there's no more prolific superhero movie writers than him. He's that year, I think he wrote Death Warrant. The same year, he wrote Dark City. He's written The Dark Knight, Man of Steel, Terminator: Dark Fate.
But did he write Batman Begins as well?
Yeah, he did Batman Begins with and Christopher Nolan had a hand in that too. But I'll go back even further. So this is the writer of Demonic Toys, and this is the same. It follows the same beat where Demonic Toys about a woman gets locked, a female cop gets locked in a warehouse, and the toys are possessed by some demon. And it goes from that like little very isolated story to like, oh, it's gonna be like they're gonna resurrect the demon god and he's gonna take over the world, and now the fate of the world is in this woman's hands. So I think with writers, that's the beauty of sort of analyzing their work. You see just common threads, even from something like early in his career, like Demonic Toys to Blade, and it's kind of following very similar beats. But yeah, I think the script kind of just is all over the place in many cases, where in some cases it just doesn't know what tone it's going for, and maybe that's also some ad libs from Wesley Snipes, because even like in the beginning when he does that very out of character like when he turns to the cops are shooting at him and
motherfucker,
like,
he was motherfucker,
yeah, which is completely out of character for Blade and for the rest of the film. It's completely inconsistent, and I just wonder if that was Wesley Snipes being Wesley Snipes or that was actually a line that was thrown in. But I think, not to get too far into the directing, but I think the director did a great job with putting together this script that's like very comic booky, kind of lacking any sort of internal logic, and making an entertaining film.
All right, so speaking of him, let's just get into the director, who is Stephen Norrington. Actually started out as a visual and makeup effects guy, and I feel like it does kind of show here. He did effects work on the Aliens franchise, Gremlins, Hellraiser, and The Exorcist. The only other directorial thing of note that he did was the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And then after he directed that, he retired from directing. So now, Dash, again, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but expound upon, how do you think he did? Again, now with the understanding that he may not have necessarily had a whole lot of prior directing experience, and he approached it from the eye of an effects guy.
Respectfully, I think he killed it. Like, I think from the beginning of setting the tone of a movie that I'm still thinking about, like, 20 something years later, I think it's like, I would call that opening in terms of like vampire films, iconic kind of shit.
Yeah.
Like, especially towards like the end of the 90s. And I think like most directors, you would never be able to call any scene that they've ever made an iconic part of anything or any type of zeitgeist. So like just to talk about just that one scene, I think also like as it starts to go, some of the choices of when he's like chasing the cop through the city and they start to speed it up a little bit and Blade's like chasing him, and then the camera like moves over into like you see someone standing on the corner and they get bitten, and it's like just really establishing like these two people are moving through this bigger world. And like if I told you to do that, right, like like maybe the script says like Blade is chasing cop through the city, but we get glimpses of what's going on, like that could be you cut to something, the camera pans, the where's the what kind of shots are you using. And I just think the way it's like very coherent, the like locations look good. I think the way that characters interact in different spaces, like it really felt like the world is existing unknowing to this whole other thing. And I think that's all directing choices. I thought the action scenes were competently shot. Like I could see there weren't rapid cuts. I think they leaned into the strengths of the main actor who's good in martial arts. I think like there was just so much of the movie that just kept me in it, and I think that that's a testament to the directing style and choices that were made.
Telly?
Yeah, well, Carlos, I know last time we talked about this movie there was some debate whether or not you saw Death Machine with me, which was Stephen Norrington's first movie, first feature. It was direct to video. It starred Brad Dourif, And
is that the one that has like a shopping bag? It looks like, or it was like a mechanical hand or something. Is
something
the
like that. It's about a rogue robot running that looks like an alien from the Alien movies running through like a building.
Yeah, when I was looking him up, I did see the poster art and did notice that I did recognize that. So I just didn't recognize the name when you were asking.
Okay, yeah, because that was his first like feature film, and I think that got him this job, and that's one of those movies that went to straight to video, and those are the perfect example of like why I was like into B movies back in the day. Because once in a blue moon you find a gem, and that was like a gem of a B movie, and I think that impressed whoever at New Line so much they hired him for Blade. But yeah, I think like the film isn't quite sure if whether or not like people know what, because the weird thing about this movie watching it again, it's like Wesley Snipes pulling out that gigantic gun, he's running around dressed like a very expensive car seat, and people don't seem to like, the police don't seem to like care. There's not like a manhunt for this guy that's like, you know, shooting things, and even that sort of face off later on in like Chinatown or something with Stephen Dorff and Wesley Snipes, and they're shooting. It's just the rest of the world just doesn't seem to acknowledge what's going on, which is bizarre. So I think like Stephen Norrington just said, you know what, we're just going to make this really fast pace. It reminded me a lot of Highlander in a way. We're just going to make this really fast pace, damn any kind of logic and realism, but we want to really lean into the comic booky aspects of this, and the way everything is shot, the effects, the practical effects are amazing in this movie. The CGI, it's early CGI, so you know we'll give it a pass. But just in terms of just like pure fun and entertainment, great job.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right to some degree, but then there's, and again, maybe this is more of kind of a writing thing, but there were some like odd turns that I didn't know if that really fit. Like I know there's like the whole Blade fighting his own natural like urges and the serum not working, and I think that there's some kind of, I think he might have had some Goyer in the writing, some ideas about like kind of self-loathing, and you know, like he's going after and like killing his own kind and like fighting. He had, you know, the whole thing with his mom was, I thought, was a really weird scene. You know, like the idea, like I don't know if that was supposed to be like sexual or if that was supposed to be, you know, also the fact that just randomly, you know, the mom has been around this whole time. Also, shout out to Sanaa Lathan, looking fine as fuck. And so, yeah, I think that, you know, there was like one of these things where there's like so many ideas in the pan, and if any one of those things separately could have been explored very deeply and possibly quite effectively, but just kind of throw it in and then not really touch it brings attention to it more by the absence of any explanation than anything else.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's the weakest part of the movie, is just sort of there's no real emotional core in the film. It's just like eye candy throughout
Whistler
the movie.
dying, kind of,
but
they
really
undid it in the second movie.
But there's really no like, there's no moment there. Like, you know, it's like that could have been a moment where like at least see some kind of emotion from Blade, but he just doesn't seem to give it. He seems more annoyed that Whistler's dying than sad. And then also I thought the was it Karen, the blood, the scientist. I thought from a directing standpoint, maybe this is also a problem, maybe it was a writing thing, but for this I blame the directing, where she seemed a little too similar to Blade in terms of her performance. It's kind of like droll, serious. There should have been a little bit more contrast there with the characters. She just seemed like an extension of Blade, as opposed to like there was no dynamic there, and I didn't even feel that there was supposed to be any sort of sexual tension between Blade and her or anything. I just think anything. So in terms of just like the performances and the relationships within the film, and even Whistler being like this father figure, I didn't really feel any of that. But I think the movie moves so quickly through everything that I'm just like, I just overlooked that, and because that's not the point of the movie.
That brings us, I mean, let's get into the cast, right? Yeah. So Wesley Snipes needs no introduction. Been on the pod a few times already. Apparently he was one of 3 actors that were considered for the role. The others were Denzel and Lawrence Fishburne, but Goyer and Norrington always had Snipes in mind. Honestly, I couldn't imagine anybody else in the role.
I would have gotten Steve James, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying he's been better, but he should have been on that short list.
And I couldn't imagine Denzel trying to do this,
or
the
thing
or
is,
Lawrence
Fishburne. Is this like the same way if I wrote a script and I'm like, yeah, I'm considering Samuel L. Jackson, and Samuel L. Jackson's like, who are you?
Who's
you? Know what
I mean? That's. I mean, again, I couldn't imagine anybody doing this role better. Again, also it helps that he's an actual martial artist, so he was able to pull off some of those action sequences. I love the idea that they made Blade into like a ninja. There's that scene where he's going to fight Dorff at the end, and as he runs towards him, he does the ninja scroll run with the like sword behind him, does a backflip, like kind of lands. He's throwing, they're not shurikens, but basically shurikens. Like, I love the mold. And when he looked at this, I think and again, I'm not sure if it was Wesley Snipes' choice or if it was, directors or writers to like take this old school ideas that we see and visuals that we get from some of these ninja movies and really make Blade a ninja. I know also that he's quite a method actor, and apparently there have been stories about him while in this role. Couldn't refer to him as anything but Blade the entirety, even like Offset. Didn't want to talk or interact with any of the other actors, and apparently it came to a head a few times on the set of Blade 3. But again, I think no one else could have done this like him. I know when they were going to recast him in the new movie with Mahershala Ali, I was like, I just couldn't see it. And then I really wanted to see Snipes come back, but now that I've seen him and he's aged, it was like a little weird to see him in Wolverine and Deadpool. But Sally, why don't you hit us off? What are your thoughts on Snipes in this role?
No, this was great for Snipes. I think this was like one of his, because he was, doing a couple of action movies at this time, right? But this was the one that kind of broke through. I don't think he ever matched the height of Blade ever again as an action star, but this was like a signature role for him. It helped that there was, he was the first one, so there was no one to compare him to. And this, him being a trained martial artist and a good actor, so perfect marriage for the perfect role and perfect actor for it.
Do you think he used the good acting in this?
I would have loved to see Steve James in this role because Steve James knows the martial arts, has the physique, has the mustache, so. But that should.
What about you, Dash?
No, I mean, this was his role.
Right.
And also just could Steve James grow that flat? Could he do his hair like that? I mean, like that's all of those little things. I think I just have a hard
jump in. There would have been a complication because Steve James died like 5 years before this movie came out, so that would have been a problem. Yeah.
Listen, if they could bring Whistler back in Blade 2, they could bring
immediately
Steve James back.
1 of part 2.
But I think also like this, by the time this came out, he was already Simon Phoenix. And just visually, I think like, the crazy hair that, that he had, I think that like I was already able to buy him in this, like, it wasn't as much of a stretch as I think like if it was somebody who was more recognizable or just in different roles. He was one of the very few like already, like 90s black action stars that were main. And I think that led a credibility to this because I don't know if Blade would have been, if it was someone who was like, a lower tier actor, I don't know if it would have had the same level of impact of seeing someone that already who, by the time he did this, he was like, Passenger 57, Demolition Man. I think he might have done Art of War and was he
is that after?
No. I don't know. I'm not sure if he did that yet, but he was already in enough he was already in New Jack City. Like semi-household name, and I think it just gave
Major League.
Yeah, and I think like when you watch the movie, especially starting like and I just think about that the Chris Rock joke where it's like he talks about like women already know who they're gonna hook up with, like they're just like, yo, just don't say anything stupid to ruin it. Yeah, and I thought that this movie had that, right? Like at the beginning it starts and you're like, wow, that was a really strong opening. You're seeing Wesley Snipes do his thing and you're just like, just hold that note for the next 2 hours. And I think like with him in it, he has the personality to like not make him like he's brooding throughout the movie, but there is a levity. The comedy, I think, for the most part works, has like some really funny one-liners that we'll still quote up until today. And I really don't know who else would have. I think if someone else did it, it would have been like, hey, remember Blade, and not like, yo, this was the shit that started like the Marvel movie universe. And I don't even know if Like, who would you bring back? When I saw Deadpool and he showed up, I was like, no way. And some of that was because of the backstage, politics of it. But, like, I don't know who else could have done that. I don't know.
Well, on the other side of things, the villain played by Stephen Dorff, I looked him up, and actually, I don't know. At the time, I thought he was at the time a bigger deal, but when I go and I look him up online, clearly this was his claim to fame. I mean, the only thing I saw that he had done other than this was a bunch of episodes of a TV show and called What a Dummy, and he was in a movie called Judgment Night.
Yeah, Judgment Night is my jam.
Well, The Gate. Well, yeah, when he was a kid. You ever seen The Gate with him? When he was a kid, he unlocked.
Oh, was he the kid in The Gate?
He was the kid in The Gate. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The main kid, not the
yeah. The hero. Well, I mean, again, but still, again, I don't know at the time why I thought he was a bigger deal. But in any event, I don't know. I kind of found him to be pretty forgettable. The thing is, he never felt menacing to me.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if it was just bad casting or bad directing of him, but I was never really totally sold on him. What do you think, Dash?
I just didn't think that they didn't give him enough. Like, he had a little bit of like plot background, right? So I could see like, what's my motivation? You're a new vampire going against the old guard. And there's scenes that kind of set it up, but there's nothing like any scene stealing moments. There's not much character stuff to differentiate him from I forgot who, like, the main other vampire, the guy who gets burned and like gets chopped up. Like, there's not much separating them. They have like similar goals of just like being cool vampire kind of looking things. I thought aesthetically he looked cool, right? Like, him like kind of like sitting with the AirPods, the earbuds on. I think for the like turn of the century kind of thing of like, typically from what I thought of like vampires, he seemed like kind of cool. He seemed like the kind of guy that would like throw vampire parties, right? Like, and I think that was what the character was, but I just didn't think they had enough scenes or anything for him to show any of that. So the takeaway of that is pretty forgettable. Like, he had like a couple of moments that if you think about it, you'd be like, yeah, he was outside with all the skin, the skin block, the sunblock.
He threw the kid at the bus.
but it wasn't like they just didn't give him enough to just be like, yeah, like it was a cool scene, but I think it wasn't anything that made him like one of my favorite villains in a movie. But I thought he was fine. Just didn't really have anything to do.
Telly?
Yeah, I thought he was miscast. He came off more bratty than brooding. And
absolutely.
And as I was watching it reminded me a lot of Hellraiser 3. And if you guys saw that, where
the one in the club,
the one in the club, and there's a guy that is like the owner of the club, but he's like this big jacked, kind of darkly handsome kind of dude. And I thought that maybe they needed someone more like that, because as much as Wesley Snipes is believable as like the sword wielding guy, Stephen Dorff is very unbelievable as the sword wielding guy at the end. So there's that big disconnect there. And yeah, he doesn't have much to do, granted, and he just has to scheme to unlock whatever he's gonna, bring the blood god back or whatever it is. But yeah, I just didn't feel any kind of. I wasn't waiting for that showdown at the end, right, between him and Blade, because it just didn't seem like there was gonna be much of a match, and there isn't. So.
And in Boucher Wright, I think we kind of touched on it again. For me, sentiments exactly Telly. I think she was one note and not very good contrast to Blade. I didn't see any particular chemistry there, and I don't think I've ever seen her do anything else. So, not thoroughly impressed. Dash, what are you? Any thoughts?
I was just a little surprised because I've seen, and I can't think of any off the top of my head, but usually like if there's a superhero character or like a main character, usually like the vessel of the story is the secondary character, because you're not like. This is her origin, right? Like, she was a regular person, and sometimes you go through the beats where the main character kind of stays that status quo, and you get the like the 3 acts through that secondary character, but that doesn't really happen. So it was just like a competing, like, not much development between the main person and the secondary character, and then you're just like, I care about Blade, so it was just like you guys are saying, competing in the same space, and just didn't do much to add to, anything other than just having someone to explain exposition to.
Yeah.
I'm just curious if, her performance was, her choice, or the director or the writer, or who kind of influenced that. Because you think about, again, just after freshly rewatching Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right? Do you have like this kind of like wide-eyed, like what the hell's going on, Lois Lane type of character? I thought that would have helped kind of counterbalance the dynamic between Blade and even with Whistler, but she was just like completely stone faced throughout. And then her transformation from like this scientist to someone who's just like burning up Pearl and shooting guns, and that's never sort of showcased or explored at all. Stuff just kind of happens.
She is a fast learner, telling you.
No, it's like, where did this come from? That. So I thought that was the weakest. But Carlos, thanks for helping us know how to pronounce her name. But I just thought that was the weakest part of the weakest performance in the movie.
Yep, agreed 100%. Just as a side notes, I want to give a shout out to Chris Christopherson as Whistler. I thought he was solid in the role that they put for him. I also shout out to Donald Logue as Quinn. Apparently, Donald Logue didn't really have much in the way of script lines when the movie was originally written, but on set he was like just kind of being so funny that they just let him improv. And the majority of, I think, the comedy you were talking about, Telly, I think there's two main sources of that comedy, and again, one is Blade and the other is Quinn, in very different ways. I mean, again, if you don't like that, you either like it or you don't. So I'm guessing you're going to say no.
I'm not a fan of those types of characters. Like you were talking about John Leguizamo on Executive Decision, where it was obviously they were improvising to trying to get themselves more in the film, and that kind of comic relief that's kind of unnecessary. I kind of wish that they just played it straight throughout the whole film, because Wesley Snipes could have carried the movie just with that character, and not have to.
Kind of hilarious. He kept on losing his arm though.
Joke. I don't know. I was like, okay, yeah, all right.
Dash.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was like a kind of running gag, right? Like that he's just always getting messed up, and I didn't mind him in it, but I just felt like there wasn't enough of a like contrast either between him and the main villain, and I think that was what did the disservice of it, right? Like if you have like a TJ Miller type character next to the villain, and they're almost like overshadowing, because like when it came to this, like at the beginning you see him getting head in the club, and like he gets burned, and he comes back and he's doing like kind of cooler stuff, right? Like he's burnt, and then he jumps out the window, he's killing cops, he's like doing all this stuff, and then this other dude's like not doing as much, so it competed a little bit to the point where I wasn't fully appreciative of what was going on, but I thought it was cool, and I like that little bit of like cartoonish aspect to the world of vampires, of like what happens if like the thing that I like about what this movie did was it answered questions in some kind of practical ways, right? So what happened? Like, can a vampire heal itself? Can what happens if you're hurt and not staked through the heart? And then his character was an answer to that, and you start seeing him die in different ways, but not fully explored in a plot point of view. But I thought the comedy was okay, and I didn't think it seemed as out of left field, because there's a lot of like funny, jokey kind of moments that happen, and I thought like, without anybody on the villain side, then if it becomes only Wesley Snipes as like the level of humor, then I can't take him seriously. You know what I mean? So there's like everyone has a little bit of that, and I thought that he was fine.
One of the things they didn't explain was, again, I think the goal was to turn pretty much everybody into vampires, right? Or at least in the original version of it. But like, if you turn everybody into vampires, then who do you eat?
Yeah.
Right.
A few things like that would just like, I think like bringing one human being to a club, so everyone's drinking this dude, like
and especially with all the blood you wasted through the sprinklers.
Yeah, why? A couple of like Wesley Snipes things didn't make sense. Like that he keeps chopping this dude up. Does he keep escaping? Because he burned him and left. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but then he shows back up at the hospital. He's like, I came to finish the job.
Well, that's
Just
what I
do
mean
that,
about,
you know, like
all the plot holes in the film, and you kind of just
Yeah.
overlook it because it's such a stylish film.
Yeah, so a lot of that stuff, like, you know, if you start to really dive in,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
What are we doing at that point?
Yeah, you know, like hey, you just go with it.
Yeah.
So also I want to give again a quick shout out to Tracy Lords and Sanaa Lathan for being fine. Also shout out to I don't know what that guy's name was, but the Jabba the Hutt dude I found pretty funny. All right, so at the box office in North America, Blade actually was the film that dislodged Saving Private Ryan, which had led the previous 4 weeks at the box office. You know, I think it made like 17 million its first week, and then it would hold the top box office spot for 3 weeks until Something About Mary took over for it. It finished its box office run with 70 million domestically and 61 million worldwide for a total of about 131 million on only a $45 million budget. It also spawned some sequels. So the franchise total, what do you guys think if you had to, we'll do Price is Right rules. Dash, what do you think the total franchise?
In full disclosure,
never mind.
I should have just been like,
you said 100 and something for the first one, and I think the second one did a little bit better. So I'll say like 300 million.
400 million across the franchise, right? On initial start of 45 million, and they didn't even think they were going to get a sequel. So, I mean, by all accounts, huge success, right?
Yeah.
Crazy thing that I found in there is that for 400 million that they made on the franchise, Marvel only got $25,000 for leasing out the franchise to them.
Well, at that point, Marvel was damn near on life support. And that's why, you know, they licensed everybody. And I mean, they probably already at this point in 98 with like X-Men coming up and then Spider-Man being the next year, they likely already had or were working on deals for their main characters.
Yeah,
I mean, like Blade isn't even like C-list, so I totally buy that. I could see that. I'm surprised that they made a Blade movie with a budget of 45 million. I'm more surprised at New Line Cinema for, you know, putting that kind of money behind. I
actually imagine a good chunk of that has to be including marketing, because it doesn't look like it was 45 million. Then again, who knows how expensive that CG stuff was back in the day, server farms, you know.
Yeah.
And so as far as reviews go, it's sitting at a 56 on Rotten Tomatoes, but a 71 on IMDb.
7.1? What does that mean?
71. Well, 7.1 out of 10. So 71.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Roger Ebert gave the film 3 stars out of 4, writing, Blade is a movie that relishes high visual style. It uses the extreme camera angles, the bizarre costumes and sets, the exaggerated shadows, the confident cutting between long shots and extreme close-ups. It slams ahead in pure visceral imagery.
It do.
Which is, I'm not mad at you for that one.
Friend of the show.
Okay.
And we like to take a look to see what the streets are saying about the film. So on Letterboxd, AWS writes in a 5-star review, some asshole vampire steals Blade's shades. Then Blade cuts his head off and grabs the shades off his head as it's flying through the air, then puts them back on. It also opens with Tracy Lords taking someone to a blood rave. This movie is absolutely perfect. Blade forever. Matt Lynch in a 4-star review writes, some motherfuckers are always trying to skate uphill is greater than I am Iron Man. And on the other end of the spectrum, Nico L in a 1-star review wrote, what even was that?
When was that?
So,
I'm curious if that's like a modern, like a recent review.
You know what? I didn't write down I didn't write down how old it was. I just was going for like low reviews.
See how like someone, you know, a young person now watching Blade, how they would react to it.
I mean, again, the reason I picked that is because I could see like credits rolling and like literally just somebody sitting there like.
Yeah. Well, we're trying to make sense of it for sure. Yeah.
All right, so let's go to favorite scenes. Telly, I'll start with you. What's your favorite scene in the film?
Definitely the opening. Yeah, that's just like, I mean, I think we all agree that's where everything kind of all clicks and locks into place. and to the detriment of the film, because even the ending is not as spectacular as the opening scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. Dash?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty confident we're all going to say that. But I will throw one just to like break it up that always makes me laugh and lives rent free in my head. And it's when the cop shows up at our house and Blade's there and he's just telling exposition while beating him up, but throwing him through all the stuff. And he throws the cop through the table and she goes, "Is all that necessary?" I just think that's like a perfect encapsulation of Blade's character of just like getting off on beating people up extra, and it just makes me laugh. Not my favorite scene in the movie, but I did want to bring it up in the pod. It makes me laugh every time.
That's fair.
Is that necessary?
That's fair. That's definitely fair. All right, and so Dash, why don't you hit us off with your rating?
So just to give a little bit of context behind the rating. It's this movie, like, I'm judging it now and I'm also judging it from then. It was such a fresh take on vampires, a fresh take on comic books, and I think one of the reasons why it stood the test of time and also became a basis of a lot of stuff was because it was a good execution of establishing crazy comic book world with current world. And I think like a lot of the execution that's gone into like the Matrix and other like X-Men of no one else knows about these things, so literally using the same template at times. And I just thought it was like really, really well made. And aside from the CG and a little bit of the lull of the writing towards the third act, I got to give this 4 singing off-key Japanese schoolgirls out of 5.
That's a good one.
I thought it held up, and it was really good to see where a lot of things that are still happening came from. So, I mean, this kicked off the MCU unofficially.
Telly?
Yeah, being not the biggest fan of the MCU and not really caring much for comic book movies in general, but I do appreciate what this film tries to do, especially during that time, which is really, you see a director here that's trying to be very ambitious and really trying to put a stamp on the world, and you see that come across. It's also not overly like art directed and production design. It just feels very grounded at the same time. And I do like the fact that, Wesley Snipes, I think it was his idea to bring in some of the more sort of Hong Kong action sort of aesthetics into this, and it shows. And I think that's one of the signature aspects of this film. So I'm going to give this 3 homoerotic facial caresses out of 5.
Wow. Okay. All right. So for me, I think, to some degree, to Dash's point, I feel like this is not only like the granddaddy of a lot of the Marvel superhero era, but also very much a product of its time. I have a lot of fun with this movie, and I think it's, again, something that is fun to go back to, that feels like, again, putting on an old coat. I didn't like it as much as I thought I was going to like it, but I still did very much enjoy watching it. And so I am going to give this 3.5 motherfuckers ice skating uphill out of 5. And now with that, I'll turn it over to Telly, who has the choice for our next episode. Telly, what are we watching?
Okay, so I want to do a film that I've never seen before, but just as I get older, I'm a little bit more interested in this genre. So I think I'm going to do our first Western, and it's going to be 1990s Young Guns.
Okay.
You know, it's going to be cool. That's where they got the regulators, the intro.
The words
good too. Yeah, I never seen Young Guns. So I saw somebody posted, I think, on like Instagram, like where that came from, and people like, yeah, that's Young Guns. So I'm looking forward to watching that. Good pick.
So I have seen Young Guns, but I don't remember it. I actually have a more clear recollection of Young Guns 2. So, because it was on, I don't know, a couple years back. But I'm really interested in going back and checking that out. That's gonna be a lot of fun. And before we close out the episode, we just wanted to make mention on a sad note. We had the passing of 2 actors. First was Richard Chamberlain of Shogun fame, and probably a little bit more relevant to our particular podcast, Richard Norton. Passed away. You've seen him in every single time you'd see a white person in a Jackie Chan movie or a Cynthia Rothrock movie, and he could kick. That was him. And so we just want to give an RIP to both of those guys.
RIP.
And RIP to you guys. So with that, everyone, please like, comment, subscribe, throw us some recommendations for things that you'd like us to cover, and for Dash and Telly and the rest of us here at Shoot, Punch, Kick. See ya.